Can we just have a moment for the cover? Here are all the cards. Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Something I realized when I was going and putting all the footage together is that there technically was not an intro for this video. A lot of it didn't make sense in the beginning, so I just wanted to pop in and kind of do a quick explanation. So with this video, originally when I filmed it, it was during the 24-hour readathon portion for Escape the Readathon, and I had thought that I would be able to read a bunch of books during that time, and it turned out that was not the case. And after that happened, I still wanted to do this zombie apocalypse themed reading video, and so I was like, you know what, we haven't done a Love It or Lose It in a while, so let's go and do that. I just wanted to put this little disclaimer, since you're probably clicking on this video thinking, oh, it's gonna be a Love It or Lose It, but it's not that way until like part way through the video. But once you get to that part, you're gonna find that I made a bunch of different types of cards for us to do the Love It or Lose It portion. I really like going and gamifying how I go and pick out my books. It just kind of makes it really fun and helps eliminate that indecisiveness that I tend to have when it comes to picking a book I want to read. I went and created a lot of really fun cards, and you'll get to go and see those once I get to the Love It or Lose It portion. Before I get to the game, I actually ended up reading a book that I really loved, and I hope you go and watch that part before getting into the Love It or Lose It part, because that book was so much fun, and I think it's definitely one of those hidden gems that you might not always go and find. That being said, I'll let you get back to the actual video, and hopefully this helps clear up any confusion before you get into the rest of the footage. We are now at a 24 readathon piece, and I honestly am so conflicted with which book to start first. This honestly happened at the perfect timing because I finished my other book, Half City, which I was able to go and submit for Winston's Lounge if you saw my previous video, and I was kind of alluding to a little surprise and something that was happening, and that was because I had inside information that my team was going to be having to go and do a 24 readathon where we go and submit pages for 24 hours, and we don't know the amount of pages we need to submit. We basically have to keep submitting them until we get told we hit it, or after the 24 hours ends, then we find out what happens and whether or not we made it. I think what I'm planning on doing is maybe reading thinner books. This honestly came at the perfect time because I actually have Monday off. I kind of took a long weekend for mental health. What I've kind of been wanting to do, I'm not gonna lie, I've been really wanting to do an apocalyptic or like zombie, dystopian, all of those things, because like I really love like end of the world type of stuff. I'm thinking I might do a specific reading video for those types of books. So I've had these prepared. I've had them sitting on my desk with me for a while, and these are some of the books that I have here. The top two I actually had picked out for my May TBR, but there's a couple of other books here, and I do have a bunch of other ones that I just don't have the capacity to go and lift up in my tiny hands. These are some of the options that I have to go and read during this 24 hours. I'm at least an hour behind on starting for this. I had to finish editing my Escape the Readathon vlog for weeks 1 and 2. So now that I'm done with that, I really need to figure out what I'm gonna read. I'm kind of thinking that I'm going to start with Frostbite by Angela Sylvain. This one might be a little bit more on the cheesy and goofy side, but it's not too thick of a read, and I feel like I could fly through this one. This book has 268 pages, so I feel like that's a good start. And then after that one, I might be tempted to go and start Rust Colored Rain, but that's kind of what I'm feeling at the moment, so I'm excited to start this. I also did take a little bit of a break as well to go and watch Deja's Tarot Readathon announcement video, because I am planning on joining that. I had to go and watch through all that stuff and then figure out like what tarot deck I'm going to be using, so my squirrel brain was definitely jumping all over the place. But we're going to start with this one and then see what we start reading next. But wish me luck. It seems like tomorrow is going to have a lot of reading in my future. I honestly didn't get a lot of reading done yesterday. I think I started reading an hour after our 24-hour readathon had started. I got 38 pages in. Also, can we just have a moment for the cover? I feel like this cover is so fun. So with this book so far, we are getting some nostalgia pieces. I believe this book is in the 90s. Yeah, it's in the 90s because our main character is in the year of 1997. Okay, so that's what it says on the back, and it is in Demise, North Dakota. I'm a South Dakota girly, so I feel like I'm kind of pitted against my rival state, if that makes sense. With this, we're getting a lot of like 90s jokes here and there and a lot of nostalgia pieces. Like in this book, there's still the Blockbuster, and Blockbuster was around when I was growing up, and we didn't always go and get movies from there. My dad and I more so usually like to go and peruse Best Buy and pick up DVDs that way. We actually have over a couple hundred of DVDs at my parents' house, and I still need to go back there and pick up some of my favorites and bring them here. I personally love having physical copies of my favorite media, so there's a lot of fun nostalgia pieces like that. There's also something called the Piggly Wiggly, which I never got to go and actually experience, but my dad talks about it fondly. I think he even worked at a Piggly Wiggly. I don't know if it's like a convenience store type of thing, so that's referenced here. But our main character, she's in Demise, North Dakota, and from the sound of it, she's having to put off going to her dream college in Arizona because her mom has Alzheimer's, and it kind of got aggravated after her dad passed away, and so her mom's health really plummeted, and she was able to go and get a little bit of some understanding from the college, so she's waiting another year, but she's not really hopeful that things are going to progress and that she's going to be able to leave her mom, so she's stuck in this small town and just really bummed out about that. She has a lot of close friends and everything. A lot of the relationships and the way people interact with each other is also very nostalgic of where I grew up in my hometown, because it was a small town and you pretty much knew everyone around you, and there was that whole piece that you kind of gotta be nice to these people because you're stuck dealing with them. There's a whole aspect of that and being kind to one's neighbor and helping them out. Basically, while the character is just going and hanging around the house, suddenly she looks outside while she's talking on the phone with her best friend, and she sees something fall from the sky, and she thought it was a shooting star, but it happens to fall really close to the outside of her house. So she goes and investigates it, and it's a meteorite, and she's about to go and touch it, but suddenly there seems to be this weird ooze, black ooze that is coming out of it, and she's like, okay, maybe I better not touch it. So she backs away and ends up going to sleep, but in the morning she's figuring that she's gonna have all these news people going and talking to her because she phoned about this meteorite to the police. Well, when she wakes up, everyone's surrounding this meteorite, but they don't really give her the time of day. They're like, yeah, you called this up, but so did half of the town. So again, she's kind of bummed out where she's like, all right, cool, I'm nothing special again. And she's just kind of going around her daily routine and stuff, going to work, trying to go to the local McDonald's, but apparently someone is holding up the line there because they have a pet tiger that they like to go and order all these burgers for. So it's just very quirky, very small town, very nostalgic. So I honestly am having a fun little time with it. We haven't really gotten to the part where anything intensive has been happening quite yet, but again, I'm on page 38, so it might take a while for things to build up, but I'm gonna go and get back into reading, and I'm hopeful that at least I'll be able to finish this book before the 24 hours is up. I don't know if I'll be able to start or read another book because today is my day off and I would like to kind of do some other things too. I do also have games later tonight with some of my friends because Dead by Daylight, their 2v8 is going to be ending today. So I'd like to get a few matches in for that since I haven't had the chance to play that yet. We'll see. Things are kind of up in the air, but I'm excited to get back into it. I also have a Cicero on my lap because it's a little bit chilly if you can't tell from the sweater, so we're getting all nice and snuggly while we're reading today. Okay, so I did not finish the book. I got extremely close though, and I got to page 174. Still really enjoying the book. They kind of had an interaction with a doomsday culty church, which was very interesting, and I'm kind of curious to see what will happen next because right now they're trying to go and run away from them. They barely made it out, and Nate's mom is actually a part of that church, and she's kind of seen like the error of the Reverend's ways and maybe how he's not entirely all he's cracked up to be or how he's showing that he is, or at least that's my hope that will kind of happen, but we'll see. It's it's very interesting, and I feel like this book isn't too long, but so much has kind of happened in it. It doesn't really feel like there's been a really dull moment. Maybe like 30 pages in, it was a little bit slower, but I feel like after that, things have just kind of been moving along and it's been very fast paced. So I'm enjoying it. It kind of seems like the humans that have been bit and are infected with this virus, they're not necessarily zombies per se in the typical sense, but they're more so like brainwashed, either with forgetting everything or being hit with this more intense aggression. Either way, they're definitely not themselves in this whole scenario. I don't know, I'm having a fun little time with this. This is definitely feeding that itch that I've had to kind of have more of that apocalyptic setting. It's very enjoyable, especially with a small town and nostalgia piece. So we'll see how things go, but I submitted my 174 pages read because I don't think I'm going to be able to finish this book before the 24-hour readathon ends, but I feel like my team is doing phenomenal. They've submitted a lot of pages and honestly I'm like, how are they all reading this fast? But I know a lot of them are doing audiobook, and I probably should have done audiobook, but I really wanted to kind of focus more on a physical book in my hand and reading something physically that way. So I put another bookmark in to help indicate where my spot is, and then I'll be using the astronomer's bookmark to continue on with the book, and then depending on what we get, I'll just save those pages to log later, and this will help me kind of keep track of things because I'm awful with numbers. I'm great at books, awful with numbers, so hopefully that will help keep me sorted and help keep my brain on track. So I finished Frostbite, and like I said earlier, I won't be able to go and submit this book because the 24-hour readathon portion has ended. Now the room that we're at is actually the greenhouse, and with this one, it has to be a randomized read. What I'm thinking for this is that maybe we could continue on with my Love It or Lose It series, but make it more of like apocalyptic, killer creatures, something along those lines, have it themed that way. I will be getting my cards and everything set up for this because I did kind of update how we're going to be doing the Love It or Lose It piece, because I realized last time with some of the stuff I did, it was just too many numbers and too complicated to just have it solely on a fortune teller. So I'm going to change that around and have it a different way, still utilizing everyone's submissions that they've given me so far. That will be in a lower comment if you want to go and submit any of these pieces and have me potentially draw what you're choosing. We're gonna kind of make this an impromptu Love It or Lose It, but themed specifically for apocalyptic, killer creature type of thing, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And if anything, with some of these books, if they don't work for prompts moving forward, then I can just go and use them for pages. But since Love It or Lose It is basically a way of going and choosing random books, I think this will be perfect for this room and just kind of integrate another fun piece and also add a series that I've been really trying to get back into. But anyway, let's talk about this book. It was so good. It kind of had a little bit of those cheesy qualities that movies in the 90s or 80s had. And at the end, in the acknowledgement, the author did kind of say like this was a sci-fi B horror, which was pretty accurate. But the thing I liked about this, it did not have any cheesy qualities that really irritate me at times. I can handle them with movies, but a lot of the time when it comes to books, it annoys me to the point where I really want to put it down. It also had a lot of that nostalgia piece for, especially for anyone that grew up in the Midwest, because at one point it even mentioned how the main character, after she was done and if they succeeded in their mission, she wanted to go to Taco John's and get some potato olays and nacho cheese. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how many times I've craved Taco John's. It's like Taco Bell, but like only people that grew up and actually ate it will understand this piece, but it's like a delicacy. It's not great, but there's something about it that you just love. But yeah, there was a reference to that, and then what was it here? There was a line here that honestly felt so reminiscent of my hometown, and it said, "Damn straight, if we can survive the winters here, we can survive anything." And I just loved that because there was a common phrase in my hometown that if you grew up living in this area, then you could 100% drive anywhere because the weather that we dealt with was so horrid. And I kid you not, there was one time Charles and I went to a musical, and when we got out, there was this huge blizzard and he was driving, and I basically got to the point where I was like, pull over. And he's like, what? Why? I was like, pull over, I'm gonna drive. And sure enough, I took over the wheel and had no issues getting us home. I really loved that quote. It just felt very like yep, you grew up in the Midwest, especially if you felt this way about winters and being able to survive anything that got put in your path. And when I got to the end of the book, there was an epilogue, and just the way the epilogue kind of led things off, it kind of gave this feeling like, oh, is this story not over yet? And then when I read the acknowledgements, it seems like this is actually part of a series. So I'm gonna have to look into that more, because I adored this book so much. It was very, very fun for me. It might not be for everyone, but I adored it. There are some trigger warnings in this, and in the beginning of the book, there is content warnings here. There is some animal death and everything, not childhood pets, but more like wildlife type of stuff, because if you read the back of the book, there's infected prairie dogs. So, you know, some of them you're just not going to be able to help and save before everything happens. I'm definitely gonna look to see what other books are in the series, because if the covers are anything like this, I kind of feel like I'll need them, because I'm obsessed with this cover. It's just so much fun. So if you love the 90s, love small town stories, also infestations of worms that go and basically create rabid prairie dogs and other creatures, I would 100% say to go and pick this book up, because it was so much fun. And especially if you grew up in the Midwest and are craving that nostalgia of hearing about Taco John's, get this, because I rarely ever hear about Taco John's. Highly recommend. And I'm gonna have to cut out my cards so that I can put things together and see what we're going to be reading next. Bailey is having reading sprints tonight, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna join in on that, just so I can keep that momentum going for reading books. So we'll see how things go, but I'll probably talk to y'all then when I'm taking a break during one of the sprints. Hello. So honestly, I lost track of time and I squirreled away. I did not go and join Bailey's sprints. Instead, I was chatting because I got a little bit distracted. I ended up making all of these. Nuggie apparently is very enthused, but I ended up making all of these cards for Love It or Lose It because I had a new idea that is really, really fun, and it incorporates the colors that I gave y'all and also the numbers that I asked y'all to go and give me. So I ended up going and making the cards for them, and then I wanted to go and design them just so that they were a little bit more fun. I just lost track of time completely, and I was also feeling really tired after work too. So I just ended up going and staying in the chat instead and hanging out with everyone that way while I ended up going and doing my crafts. I have not figured out what book I'm gonna read yet. So I have everyone's things on the spinner wheel here. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go and grab a screen recording. So, all right, let's go and spin this. I'll insert a little clip over here. So this is hilarious because I need to go and do a partner pick with this one. So we landed on Yellow 93 and TBR. Ended up going and choosing this one. But the funny thing is, this is a partner pick. So my partner currently is going and playing D&D. So I'm gonna have to do the rest of the stuff and figure out what we're getting for Yellow, and then have him go and pick the final book. So let me change over to the other screen and we're gonna pick our Yellow card. All right, so here are all the cards and we have to pick Yellow. So what I'm gonna do real quick, just quickly go and shuffle them all. I don't know which ones are which, so let's go with this top one. A horror book. So the one that we got for Yellow was horror. So we have to get a book that my partner picks, and that is a horror book. So I'm gonna pick out a couple of different ones, and then once my partner is done with D&D, I will ask him to go and pick the final one. Since we're doing specifically an apocalyptic one, I have a few different options here, and I think I'm gonna do 3 different choices and then have him pick the final one. I'm gonna go with The Shuddering by Anaya Albarn, Rust Colored Rain by Otto Schaefer, and Swarm by Jennifer D. Lyle. So I'm gonna wait until Charles is done with his D&D session, and then we will see which one of these 3 books we're gonna end up picking. So I have a few different books. I have Swarm, Rust-Colored Rain, and The Shuddering. So with this, I kind of want to do a Love It or Lose It that's specifically based off of apocalyptic type of things. So these are the books, and you have to pick one.
This one gives me the creeps.
Alright, so we're reading Swarm.
Almost this one because it says Colorado.
Alright, so we shall see how this one is, and I forgot to mention, this one is definitely a keep. I absolutely love it. I did start a little bit of Swarm last night, and honestly, I'm having very mixed opinions on it. So I'm only on page 32, but the thing that was really weird is that as soon as you start on the main page, you're basically getting thrown into this world. One of our main characters, she is just sitting in class kind of zoning out, not paying attention to the lecture, because I guess her teacher doesn't really get creative with his teachings. It's basically straight out of the book. So I'm sure you might have had a professor or a teacher that was like this at one point, where they literally just pull the information from the textbook and then put it in a PowerPoint and then read it to you. She basically is just kind of zoning out, and then happens to notice this huge butterfly that's basically on the roof of the school. And the thing that is really sticking out to her is that this butterfly is huge. And I guess there's PE classes that are going on outside, and everyone's just like stuck in place and just staring at the butterfly. But the thing that doesn't really seem realistic to me is that, you know, anytime someone sees something cool or something different, they're gonna pull out their phones and record first. Like, they're gonna be in shock and wanting to document this. They're not gonna be terrified or scared or anything like that. Because so far, what's happening in this book is just that there's these butterflies. They're huge. That's it. They're not doing anything ominous, anything terrifying or whatnot, but everyone automatically is panicking. Suddenly an emergency drill, and so everyone's kind of evacuating and following their normal protocol with certain alerts in the school. And the main character, her twin, and then two of their friends are like, hey, no, let's get out of here. Let's leave and not stick around. So they're like, okay, cool. So they're doing that, and there's a lot of other people that kind of have the same idea. But before they end up going and heading to their house, they're like, oh, we need to pick up Little. And I was like, who the heck is Little? I guess Little is their younger sibling that is at daycare. But the thing with their younger sibling is that you cannot tell how old this child is. If they're in daycare and not in school, you'd assume that they're under preschool age or maybe preschool age. You would not think that they're maybe like a 5th grader or anything older than that. And that's the thing that's frustrating me, because we're getting to meet this kiddo as they go and pick him up. And the way this child talks does not sound like a child that is like 3 or 4. Way too articulate, way too good with their words and stringing things together and describing things. I'm like, how old is this child? Because you don't really know. And I guess the kid's name is Sean, but everyone calls him Little. There's just a lot going on in the first 32 pages of the book. And I guess also while they're driving at one point, then one of the butterflies just like smacks onto the windshield. And then that's kind of when things get a little bit creepier. They see that the legs of this butterfly creature are a lot sturdier and thicker and more muscular. And then they see that, just like the image of the cover shows, there is a mouth in the middle of the butterfly. And apparently all these butterflies are different sizes and whatnot. So that's kind of where things are. But so far I'm a little bit angry with this book, because just the way everything started off just did not seem believable to me. Then also this younger sibling, no idea how old they are. I don't even know how old the other kids are. I'm assuming that they're in high school, because they ended up going and hopping into a car that one of the twins had and drove off. At least from how this book seems, it does not seem that they're living out in the country, because I grew up in a small town. I got my learner's permit, I think at around 14, and then I got my operators at 16. So I was able to drive a lot sooner than I know other kids are. And the way that this book is seeming so far is that they're in more of a city type of area, so not in a small town. So I'm like, how old are these kids to be driving? I'm assuming they're in high school, but I have no idea. So I'm not too impressed with this book so far, which kind of sucks, because I know I was excited about it. but we'll see how things go. This will be a bummer because I feel like anytime Charles has picked a book out for me so far, I either don't enjoy them or I just don't end up reading them. So we'll see if things turn around, but I'm not too impressed with it so far. So yesterday I didn't go and check in at all because work was just kind of a lot. I had a lot of files to go and do, and then afterwards I ended up going and hosting sprints. So Heather and Lexi, they hopped onto mine, which was super awesome. And the thing I really love about going and doing sprints with all the co-hosts is usually after we end the sprints, we always have like a little chatty moment, and it's so much fun because you get to go and chat more with some of these people and getting to know them. And one of the huge goals of mine with going on BookTube was just going and making new friends. I wasn't really focused on the numbers, the monetization, anything like that. I just wanted to connect with other people, especially other people that really loved books, had a lot of the same vibes and energy as me, because as someone that's a little bit of a hobbit and stays in my own little hobbit hole, I don't usually leave the house often, mostly because I do work remotely now after the pandemic. But since then, I don't usually leave the house too much unless it's with my partner. Because of that, I don't really get the opportunity to connect with a lot of people. So just going and doing that is really awesome. I love getting to go and talk to a lot more of these co-hosts because, you know, I only ever watch their videos. So this is really fun to get to go and chat with them. And also, sometimes I get a little bit nervous because I'm like, all right, you haven't had a lot of social interaction lately. Don't say the wrong thing. So yeah, that's just a little bit of my anxious little squirrel brain and the thoughts going through my head. But I made more of a dent in Swarm. I'm at least around 50%, if not over 50% in the book. My feelings for it are still around the same thing. I'm not really loving the book. However, it is a super quick read. I think part of this book kind of reminds me of what things were like during COVID and the pandemic and just kind of being in this lockdown, not really being able to leave your house because you didn't know how the virus transferred and what you could go and do to avoid things. And that's kind of how this book is. But instead of a virus, we have killer butterflies. And these kids are basically trapped in their house and kind of being the adults because their parents were at work and everything, and so they're having to go and function and make these big decisions and whatnot. The entire time I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is basically quarantine, but add butterflies. Cool. So I can't take it fully seriously. And with how they go and describe the butterflies, yeah, they're kind of terrifying with just how some of the limbs are, and they're more crab-like and more muscular. And then in the middle of the butterfly, there's these huge mouths. But also, if you get bit by one of these butterflies, they're slowly starting to learn that there's something that can happen with this. They'll either make you very aggressive and kind of take away your memory, or they'll kind of like rot your skin where that bite is, and it slowly spreads throughout the rest of your body. So those are some of the pieces that they're starting to learn with these butterfly bites. So at the end of the day, don't get bit. Don't go outside. At least have a weapon of some sort. Just some of those pieces. Like I said, I can't take this book fully seriously, and I'm just not liking some of the characters. And now appears that we're finally learning the little brother, Little, as his nickname is. He is 4 years old, and now finally his dialogue is making sense for his age. Because as I alluded in the beginning of the video, his dialogue was so articulate and much more mature than what a 4-year-old should have been. I didn't know that he was 4 years old, but it kind of seemed to be insinuated. But now at this point of the book, it has been confirmed and his dialogue makes a lot more sense. So that is one thing that's kind of been checked off of the box of pieces that have annoyed me with this. But we'll see how things go. We're currently on pages right now, in case if I forgot to mention that before. So right now, we're already in the room, we're submitting pages. Things are going so speedy. So I don't know if I'll be able to finish this book while we're still doing pages, but depending on what the next prompt is, I still plan on doing my mostly apocalyptic style readings because I'm having a really fun time with that stuff. So we'll see what the next pick is, and we'll continue on as well with a Love It or Lose It piece. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll check in with you again once I finish this book. All right, so I have finally finished Swarm. Honestly, this was a pretty quick read. It was really easy to get through the book, but I have so many issues with this. This book honestly felt like the pandemic, so 2020, but instead of COVID and that virus, it really felt like it was lockdown, but we're getting locked down because of killer butterflies. And it is so hard for me to take that seriously. Not just because of that piece, but also just because of the way it was written. This probably was a YA book, but it felt more middle grade in a lot of ways. And there was really no depth in the characters. There was no progression really with a lot of them. I think the only progression I could see is that our main character that the story is told from, she has really bad anxiety, and it kind of stemmed because of some traumatic stuff that happened in her life with the loss of a loved one. So she's had a lot of these worst case scenario pieces in her head and constantly having to go and plan and prepare for a lot of these scenarios. And so when the end of the world stuff really happens and they're kind of striving for survival, her anxiety really helps figure out things, and she's kind of looked at more as the adult in the group because she's the one that's taking care of a lot of stuff, because if she doesn't, who else in their group is going to do so? So it was kind of nice going and seeing that progression and whatnot. Some things that were a little bit bothersome were, for example, with the butterflies, there was a lot of speculation, like how did they exist? How did this happen? What's going on here? And then the ending of the book, it just felt very like meh. Like, seriously, that's all that you're gonna go with here? It was just very odd and very sudden. There was a lot more action in the later portion of the book, but like I said, the ending of the book was quite sudden and it just felt very meh. Like, all right, I guess this is how the story is going to end. And then there was this epilogue, and so many pieces were also really rushed in that. I don't know, it was not great. So I think you can probably tell by how my reaction is with this book so far, but this 100% will be an unhaul. This will not be a book that we're going to keep in our library. I feel really bummed because it was a book that Charles picked out for me to read, but I just really didn't like it. It just felt very laughable. I couldn't take it seriously. It was a speedy read. It was a speedy read, so that's nice. It didn't put me in any weird slump or anything like that. So we're gonna go and get out our cards and see what our next read is gonna be for Love It or Lose It. All right, so we're gonna pull up our little nuggie. We're gonna pull up the spinner wheel and see what we end up going and getting for the next one. Okay, so here's the wheel, and let's see what we end up going and getting. Nice. Okay, so we got Red 33, and that was Tabitha's tomes. So let's go and look at the cards and see which one we got. So we got Red 33, so we're gonna go and find the right one here. So that would be this one, and that would be Fortune Teller. So we have to do Fortune Teller, and then we need to do Red. So we're going to do this. Let's see. Own Voices. All right, interesting. Okay, so the book we have to pick has to be used with our Fortune Teller, and it needs to be an Own Voices book. So we're going to use this to see what we can get. Now remember, we need to pick a book that is also going to be apocalyptic. Since it was Red that we got first, I'm going to go and do Red, R-E-D. Then I want to see if we have 33 here. We don't, but we do have a number that ends in 3. So technically 63. So bear with me one moment while I do that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 1 I think we'll go with this one because technically it was Red 33 that we had to pick, and that will go and fit in there. A recently hauled book. Okay, this is perfect. So let me go and take a look at the shelves and I'll get back to you on which book I choose. I think I was able to figure out which book we're going to read, especially with some of the other things that we picked out. So just as a reminder, we did Red 33. And so first one with the number was fortune teller that we got. And I think after a certain period of time, what I'll do is also rearrange what numbers are associated with each prompt, just so it's still more surprising as we get more used to it and continuing to play it. So these will be subject to change, but we got fortune teller. And then I needed to pick one with an own voices because this was one of the red prompts. We pulled out my handy dandy fortune teller and I decided to kind of still use a lot of the numbers and prompts that we got with our original picking here. So I went with red and then I picked numbers that kind of had 3s in it to keep it on theme with the prompt that we got from the spinner wheel. And the one we landed on was actually a recently hauled book. So this was absolutely perfect because I have actually recently hauled a bunch of post-apocalyptic zombie survival type of books, which is really on theme with what I want to read. So I had a couple different choices that I went and picked. One of the options I could do is Rising, a State of the Union novel by Nell Nicole. This one is post-apocalyptic and ravaged by a nuclear war. There's also zombies and I think like some powers and stuff that's involved with this. And I did double check, the author is BIPOC and a lot of the characters in the book itself are also BIPOC. I think this would really work for that one. Another one that could be an option is Burn Down, Rise Up by Vincent Tirado. This one technically I think I hauled in what was expected to be my very last book haul of the year, but since this one happened to be a little bit more recent, I think what we're going to do is go with this one. It also is a part of a series, so let's say I like it. My tentative book buying ban does allow me to buy books if they continue on with a series, so little loophole, but I think we're gonna go with this one. It is a little bit of a chonker, so this one has 454 pages and the words are a little bit smaller in the book. However, because it does have zombies in it, I have a feeling that this will be a book that I zoom through, so I'm very excited to finally get the chance to look at this one. And very happy with what options we got here. So as before, I'm deleting any of the prompts that we land on with the spinner wheel. I'm excited to see how this book will go, and I'm really hopeful it will be better than the last one. So we'll see. So I have not streamed in a couple of days, to be honest. I'm guilty of falling for the Paralives trap because that game came out and I've kind of been addicted going and playing it. But also I had a little bit of bummer news the other day that kind of just bummed me out a lot, and honestly I need to start taking my Prozac again because I think just with a lot of things that have happened in the past couple of months, it's really affected my mood and I need something that's going to help regulate that a little bit more. And I was kind of tampering off of that stuff, but I think it would be beneficial, at least for my mental health, moving forward so I don't get completely stuck in my emotions to go and continue taking that stuff. So basically what had happened is I have a friend, my childhood friend, she happened to get pregnant, and sadly because of her high-risk pregnancy she's not allowed to travel in her 3rd trimester, and sadly our wedding falls during her 3rd trimester. And it's just a huge bummer because she's been someone that has been in my life ever since we were in 2nd grade. She's one of my closest friends. We've been through hell and back together, and with my wedding, that was something that I always pictured that she would be there and getting to experience that whole piece. It was something that we talked about a bunch as kids and growing up, so really, really sad. And of course, like, I'm totally happy for her and so excited for this next step of her journey and everything, but at the same time, I'm also incredibly bummed. So I'm just kind of allowing myself to sit in that sadness, but unfortunately because of that sadness I just haven't had the spoons to do a lot of other things. So there have been sprints this week and I just haven't been up to going and being perceived and being on camera, having to be happy and whatnot, and also focusing on reading a book. So I've mostly been playing video games, watching different things here and there, and this weekend I'm planning on joining some reading sprints because Escape the Readathon is going to end. I'm really hoping that by doing that, it will help me get further in this book, because as you can see, I barely made a dent. I'm only on page 28. And I'm just not getting far in this book at all. And that's not to this book's credit. I'm just not in the mood to read. My mood is just kind of creating this desire for a different kind of escapism, such as playing video games and watching some comfort shows or even catching up on YouTube. So that's kind of what I'm hoping will end up going and happening. But I think at least for the rest of the week, I'm gonna just keep things a little bit more chill. Tomorrow night, which is Friday, we're gonna be playing some D&D. So that was another reason why I really wanted to take things chill and relax, because I knew I wouldn't get too much of a break day once Friday hit, because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday would all be busy. But I'll check in with you again later. Bye. Good morning. So it is Saturday and currently our team is doing the escape pod room, and the theme is basically to go and read a book that's cover matches one of the host's thumbnails. But our team is going so fast that I don't even know if I'm going to be able to submit a book for this prompt. And so if anything, hopefully I can go and submit my book for pages. I think Leandra and Lexi have the sprints that are going on this weekend. Today, Leandra has hers, and then Lexi has hers for the final day. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to finish my book during one of those sprints. But currently, we are getting ready to go to a really cool thrifting event. We heard about it and I've been really wanting to go and check it out. Something about me is like, I don't usually do thrifting stuff because I don't have the patience to go and look through things and like find something that is a rare and beautiful treasure. And I really want to change that. I want to work on my patience with that stuff. So we'll see how things go. I'm wearing this really fun little shirt. I love how colorful it is, and we'll see. I'm hoping that we'll be able to find something either for the house or something that we could use for the wedding, but we'll see how that goes, and we'll see if my team ends up going and finishing this prompt for this room, which chances are it probably will happen. Back from that little thrift slash small business event. Honestly, when Charles and I got there, we were a little bit confused because we were expecting something that was more like thrifts and antiques and all of that stuff. But the event that we went to just kind of seemed like it was mostly a small business event. So a lot of different booths with small businesses, which was fine and dandy and all. But I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit uncomfortable. I was pretty much the only person of color there. There might have been a few people of color there, but honestly, it was few and far between. So we kind of sped through the event pretty quickly, but we did find some unexpected treasures while we were shopping around. And of course, I ended up going and finding the booths that had bookish items. Of course, I had to go and stop. So we did find a few things that we're going to go and use for our wedding, and if you are people that are invited to the wedding later this year, this is stuff that you're going to see, but you're going to know where we ended up going and finding it. First bag here, when we were going and wandering around, Charles was kind of taking the lead because I'm pretty short and they're taller than me, so it makes it a lot easier for them to go and maneuver around people. And one of the things we found was this cool little area where it had all of these letters cut out of older books. Now, I'm not usually someone that likes a lot of this stuff where it's going and taking apart old books and using them that way. As you know, I have a lot of books. I have over 1,000 books now in my home library. But with some of the stuff, I just thought it was really cool and unique. So they had a lot of different color options with a lot of their letters, but I went with this one for R because it was as close as I could find with our wedding colors, and I felt like this would also work later when we want to use it for a decoration in our house. So I got this one. Funny enough, some of these books are Reader's Digest books, so I felt like that was okay that they ended up redoing stuff with them. And then we got an ampersand. I think you have an idea of how we're doing the things. And then a C. So I don't know if I'll be able to hold them all together. Nikki, can you help me hold them? But we got R and C. So my name is Rochelle. My partner's name is Charles. So we have this that we'll have on our table at the wedding. And then we also got the letter M. So both of our last names start with M, but coincidentally, I don't think I've ever mentioned this in my channel before, but I do plan on keeping my last name when we get married. I don't plan on changing my name over to his or getting it hyphenated or whatnot. I've had my last name for my entire life and it has a lot of sentimental value to me. And Charles really has no particular feelings on whether or not I changed over to his last name or anything like that, but since our last names both start with the letter M, it kind of felt perfect to go and do this. You can't really see the design all too well, so I'll hold it up here, but super, super pretty. So we'll have that for our tables. Another thing I got was actually this. So it's a little book shelf, haha, but it has this little ring and then you can go and hang it up on the wall. And I had to go and look through a lot of the books because sadly at this event, a lot of the books that they had there for items like this were by She Who Shall Not Be Named. And I was like, I don't want to have that hanging on a wall or anything like that. I thought that this would fit really well with the vibe of my office because I do have a lot of green and everything around. And then I did get some stickers. I don't know if anyone else is like me when it comes to stickers, but I have so much anxiety with going and using them on things because I'm always worried that I won't like where I use it. But whenever I find a cute sticker, I still can't resist going and picking it up. So I got this one. It says, Booktrovert loves books more than people, which is me 100%. I love books and I love animals more than I do going and doing social interactions because I have a lot of really bad anxiety. And then I got this other one that says, I read banned books. Super duper cute. So I really liked both of those stickers. And then I can't resist anything that has tea. It is usually my beverage of choice. I can't go and drink coffee at all because of my anxiety and my IBS. It just never agrees with me. So I'm a huge, huge, huge tea drinker, which is hilarious because my partner is British and he does not really like tea. So I'm the huge tea drinker. So I got a few different ones here. This one is pomegranate hibiscus, and their company name is Tea Chemist. They do also have a website, so if you're curious, you can go and check them out there. But the person basically showed us, like, if you wanted to smell the tea, you just squeezed on it. And this one smells so nice and refreshing. I feel like this one would be perfect to have as an iced tea, and with it being summer and a lot warmer weather, I feel like this would be such a refreshing drink to have. So I was like, yeah, we gotta go and grab that one. And then the other one that I got is vanilla chai. So good. So I love chai. Chai is one of my all-time favorite flavors, and the spicier it is, the better. So there were two different ones that I was kind of torn between, but I really love the scent of this one, and I also love vanilla. So I'm excited to try this one out. There was also a cinnamon one that I completely forgot about until we were at the checkout, but since they have a website, I do plan on going and buying it that way. And then I also couldn't resist, and I got a sticker. I think you can see it. I got this one. This was the closest sticker I could get that had a cat that matched one of our own. So since we do have an orange kitty, which is Cicero, I was like, yeah, we'll get this one. Super, super cute. They also had like a calico one and a tuxedo cat. Both were so, so adorable. I'm always an animal lover, so anytime I can get something that reminds me of my own fur babies at home, you best believe I'm gonna get those. And then we got a few other things. So we had these little mugs, and they do have like a tea dispenser in them, if you can kind of see the image here. But this one has bees on it, and I was kind of torn. There was this one, and then there was a cute one with these pudgy little birds on it, but I don't have any mugs that are this color, and I felt like this would be perfect so I could go and have some tea steeping while I'm at work and go and try one of the ones that I got. And then the other mug we got was for my soon-to-be mother-in-law, and this one has dragonflies on it. I don't have to worry because she doesn't watch my YouTube channel. She's not really a YouTube person, but we got her this little dragonfly one. Didn't really get a lot of things at the event that we were hoping to find. At the same time, we didn't really know what we were going to see when we got there and what would happen, but it was a pleasant surprise to go and find some really nice tea. And then the book things that we got, like, just imagine having these at our wedding on the tables. We kind of want to do this fairy tale, bookish, whimsical wedding. That's kind of our theme. So these will be so much fun there. And these are all just old Reader's Digest books that they ended up doing these cutouts for. So not really anything that makes me feel guilty about them going and doing that stuff too. And then the other thing that I got in the mail was actually so surprising, but it's for the Tarot Readathon, and I think my hand sanitizer leaked on it, so that's why there's a spot here. So I'll have to go and wash that just to make sure it doesn't stain or anything. But I got this color that matches Team Swords, and then it has this design on the back, and the fabric is so soft. After going and getting a t-shirt for Escape the Readathon, I was like, yeah, I need to go and get merch for all these other readathons because the shirts are so comfy and I just love wearing them around the house. So this one is just gorgeous. I kind of got a size up for it so I can go and wear that comfortably and everything. And then I couldn't resist and I got one of the totes. So this is super duper cute. And I can go and bring this when I go to a bookstore or something. I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit bigger, but that's fine. She's still super cute and I can bring her around the house. So I guess now is also when I give a little bit of sad news. So while I was going and running errands and everything like that, and also recording my June TBR, it seems like a team has already escaped, which great for them. But the rest of us are stuck with the aliens, so hopefully we can make friends with them and they're not aliens like the aliens from the Alien movie or anything like that. Hopefully they're down with purely platonic relationships and things like that. But yeah, but my team astronomers, did not escape. So now it seems like we can still go and submit pages, and that will kind of show where we end up going and placing at the end of the readathon. So I still plan on doing some reading and do plan on joining sprints that Lexi's hosting tomorrow. I wasn't able to make the sprints with Leandra today. I was just so wiped by the time we got home. I just hung out in the chat instead. But yeah, my team did not escape. So we're gonna see how reading goes tomorrow. I'm gonna still try to finish my book for Love It or Lose It as well. But depending on how things go, this book might carry over into the next month. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to finish it before the end of the month. So this check-in is like multiple days later. Escape the Readathon has technically ended, and I'm now participating as a reader for the Tarot Readathon. I'm Team Swords. Go Team Swords. But I still wanted to finish my Love It or Lose It video, and honestly, it was so slow going. I tried my hardest to go and finish this book, and I finally finished it today. Also, before I forget, astronomers, we got 3rd place, so we did not end up going and winning for Escape the Readathon, but we'll see what happens next year. But anyway, back to this book. I finally finished it, and oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts, and honestly, not really a lot of great thoughts. This book had such a promising premise, and it was really intriguing with this whole zombie apocalypse line and having these people that didn't get infections but instead got powers that were given to them. It seemed like such an amazing concept, but this book was rather chunky. It was 454 pages, and it was very painful to get through this book and all of these pages. With this book, and I know that there's like a prequel or a different book, but the author at the beginning kind of has a recommendation list to go and read them through. So whether you're looking for something that's more of a world builder, or if you want something that's more of an empath line, then you go and follow it that way. I don't really know if it would have made a difference if I read the other piece, because like, even though this wasn't ranked as #1 for the world building piece, it really felt like she was trying to do that. The part that was the most frustrating for me is that with the story, It's basically taking place like a few years or months after the apocalypse has already happened. And basically what happened was there was this bombing and everything, and some people were infected and turned into zombies, or as the book likes to call them, pansies, which honestly was very, very difficult to wrap my mind around. Like, pansies. It's not very intimidating, and it almost feels like a joke and not something that you can take seriously. So there's that piece. But you either turn into a pansy or you turn into someone that has a bunch of different gifts. They had them all ranked here, so there's elementals, skills, and the others. So you could have fire, water, earth, air, or you could have special skills, so Umbra, Mortis, Scholar, or Tinkerer. But the thing that was very confusing is it seems like even if you had one of these elements, you could have one of these skills as well, but not everyone could have those. So the magic index wasn't entirely helpful because there were some people that had water, but they could also do healing, but other people couldn't have it. So there was a lot of confusion with some pieces that didn't necessarily make a lot of sense and didn't line up. I found that I kept trying to go back to the magic index and it really wasn't helpful. Another piece that also wasn't helpful was this map. So we have this map that has these different areas of how the different civilizations are in this new world. But then we have a map down here that is where our main character and like other main characters are, but you have no idea where they line up here. Are they down towards where Mexico is? Are they up by Canada? It doesn't make sense. It really wasn't clear for me. And maybe that was something that was discussed at the beginning of the book, but honestly, it was so hard to follow along because you're having one moment and maybe a little bit of dialogue, but then all of a sudden they do this flashback and do this world building piece explaining why things are the way they are, but then they jump back to the present and do a little bit of dialogue, but then realizing you don't have some of the context for this, so let's go and explain this and talk about some of these pieces and why this is this way and this is this way. Now let's jump back to the present. And then you'd maybe have a little bit of dialogue, but instead of really going and having that moment play out, instead they would go and explain like this and this took place and then we all went to bed. And then a couple of days would pass by or a couple of weeks. It just didn't flow. And so many of the pieces with the additional explanations really took me out of the story. So it was very much a slog to get through this book. I probably maybe counted a total of 4 small portions in this book that included zombies, or pansies as they called them. It just, I don't know. This book, to my understanding, is the author's debut novel. I want to say that at least on Goodreads it's above 4 stars, but it looks like the other books do get rated a little bit higher. I would like to continue on with the series and to see what my thoughts and feelings would be for it, but I don't know if after this one, if I really have the energy to try to pursue the next book in the series. So this one is going to be a little bit of the gray area for our love it or lose it. I did not love this, and normally if I did not love the book, I would absolutely lose it, get rid of it from my home library, just not take a second glance and be done with it. But because I am kind of curious about the next books in the series and just seeing if it could improve, I might try to at least read the next book in the series and maybe see if that improved, if maybe this author had someone that was editing things a little bit better, making sure that everything made more sense and there wasn't this constant jump around, and see if there's still some hope, because it does have such a great premise, but honestly was so hard to go and follow along and just was kind of like pulling teeth, because I cannot tell you how many times I had to flip back and forth trying to make sense of how some parts were lining up and how things connected, or even wondering if I completely skipped some paragraphs or somehow skipped a couple of pages because the flow was just not flowing. We're not going to lose this book quite yet. We're going to keep it so I can at least read the next book. This was not a great way to go and end the Love It or Lose It series, but I did have a lot of fun going and mixing things up with how we're doing our little game thing. But if you'd like to help participate and choose our next book, you can choose one of the following colors: red, yellow, green, or blue, and a number between 1 and 100, and then I will put you on the wheel and maybe you'll get picked for our next Love It or Lose It. But I hope you enjoyed this and thought it was a fun way to go and pick our next book, and we'll see what we end up reading next, whether it's ARCs or physicals. Who knows?